Brett was unaware that his departure for a 3-month business journey would inadvertently place his family in significant peril. Would there be anyone to welcome him back? The saga of the Anderson family gained international attention. The Anderson family epitomized the quintessential American household. Tina and Brett Anderson, the dedicated parents, worked tirelessly to ensure a comfortable life for their children, Ethan and Hannah. Ethan was fond of fishing, racing, video games, and spending time with his peers. Meanwhile, Hannah Anderson, a typical 16-year-old from California, embraced dancing, social media, and cheerleading. Like many of her age, she remained oblivious to the world's concerns, never imagining harm could come to her or her loved ones. Unbeknownst to them, a sinister observer lay in wait, ready to pounce when least expected. Tina had previously been married briefly before meeting Brett, following her first marriage's dissolution. She was vivacious, with a passion for dance and fitness, always on the lookout for thrilling activities and a significant other to share her adventures. Brett, intelligent, diligent, affable, and generous, instantly connected with Tina, and their friendship quickly blossomed into romance. Brad was employed in the telecom sector at the time. Their union was sealed, and by autumn 1996, they were expecting their first child. The Andersons' home, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse, buzzed with anticipation from friends and family for the arrival of Brad and Tina's daughter, making the event momentous for all involved. Hannah Marie Anderson arrived on July 22, 1997, a true delight with her striking blue eyes and fair hair. Her birth was a celebratory milestone for the Andersons and their circle. The couple often hosted loved ones for barbecues and celebrations, fostering a tight-knit sense of community. Brett's best friend, James DiMaggio, affectionately known as Uncle Jim, was deeply integrated into their lives, joining Brett for numerous outdoor adventures. While Hannah initially joined her dad and Uncle Jim, she later gravitated towards spending more time with her mother and friends, leaving Ethan to accompany the men. Born on October 8, 2004, Ethan reveled in learning sports and fishing with his dad, showing early signs of being a brave and charming boy. Jim DiMaggio, amidst a challenging divorce, found solace and support with the Andersons, reflecting their innate kindness and propensity to aid those in need. In 2009, Jim acquired a property of his own, nestled in the serene Mountain Empire area, southeast of San Diego, California, roughly an hour away from where the Anderson family resided. The residence was a picturesque 2-story log cabin, complete with a detached 3-car garage. With fewer than 400 inhabitants in the vicinity, the locale was essentially rural, making it an ideal spot for a hunting retreat. Once his home was fully equipped and decorated, Jim invited Brett, Tina, and their kids to use it as a getaway whenever they wished. During this period, Brett was heavily invested in his work to support his family, resulting in his frequent absence from home. Tina, too, was occupied with her job and the upbringing of their children. Hannah had blossomed into a typical teenager, craving independence and hardly ever seen without her phone, a staple in her social media-driven life. Despite his busy schedule, Brett was vigilant in ensuring his daughter steered clear of undesirable influences and remained within his protective reach. Hannah's closest companion was Marissa Chavez. The duo shared numerous similarities and were virtually inseparable, both reveling in dance, cheerleading, hairstyling, dressing fashionably, applying makeup, and chatting about boys. They thrived on being the center of attention. Hannah was intelligent, daring, joyful, and outgoing. She epitomized a spirit free of worries. Brett and Tina encouraged their daughter's journey towards greater independence. Alongside her own interests, Hannah dedicated time to coaching younger cheerleaders and bonding with her brother. By 2013, Hannah was navigating her sophomore year in high school in Lakeside, while Ethan was enrolled in Linda Lake Elementary School. Around this time, Brett faced challenges at work, prompting a search for new employment opportunities. In April, he landed a promising job offer, albeit one that necessitated extended time away from home. After a discussion with Tina, they agreed to seize this opportunity. Brett embarked on his journey to Tennessee, committing as a caring father to return for Hannah's 16th birthday celebration, an occasion he refused to miss. With Brett away, Tina leaned more on their network of friends and family for support. Jim DiMaggio, despite grappling with his own financial woes and the imminent risk of foreclosure on his house, offered assistance, considering a move to Texas as a potential solution. Nonetheless, Brett's absence didn't hinder Jim's involvement with the Anderson family. He frequently transported Hannah and Ethan to their activities, engaged them in entertaining activities, effectively becoming a secondary paternal figure. Additionally, he opened his home for Hannah and her friends as a hangout spot, offering a break from parental supervision. Jim established clear boundaries: no boys, no access to his bedroom, and overlooked other minor transgressions to ensure a safe environment for the teenagers. While Brett was away in Tennessee, the absence of his family weighed heavily on him. He made it a point to call them every other day, eager to catch up and ensure their well-being. Brett also kept in touch with Jim, briefing him on his new professional challenges and entrusting him with the safety and support of Tina and their children. In the mornings, Tina would drop Hannah off at the lively cheerleading gym, where she dedicated her time to mentoring younger enthusiasts. Come 4 p.m., Tina was expected to pick Hannah up and bring her back home. Hannah, having wrapped up her coaching session, waited outside, anticipating the drive home to reconnect with Marissa, who was anxiously awaiting a message from her that unfortunately never arrived. Around 8 p.m. on a Sunday, a call was made to the San Diego County Sheriff's Office by a local from the Mountain Empire community, reporting a residence ablaze. The fire consumed not only the main house, but also a smaller structure nearby. Firefighting teams exerted all efforts to douse the flames, yet the fire raged beyond immediate control. In a town of modest size, this incident was notably significant. Nonetheless, this fire was merely the precursor to a more grim series of discoveries. The upper story of the dwelling had completely caved in. Additionally, a gray SUV parked in the vicinity was caught in the conflagration. It took the firefighters close to 2 hours to subdue the fire. Despite the fire station's proximity, merely a 3-minute drive away, it was only after the flames were tamed that the firemen commenced a thorough inspection of the remnants to check for occupants. As they surveyed beyond the main structure to the smaller adjacent building, a firefighter spotted an anomaly, a strip of green tarp. A closer examination revealed 2 legs protruding from the entrance of the detached garage, with a body underneath the tarp, face downwards, the upper portion melded with the tarpaulin, obscuring immediate identification of gender. The fire's intensity in this section was lesser, yet sufficient to fuse the tarp to the victim's hair, skin, and skull. The scene beneath the body, smeared with a significant quantity of blood, indicated a pre-fire struggle. The attire and hair suggested a female victim, whose demise was clearly under sinister circumstances. Rope bindings around her figure, duct tape wound multiple times around her mouth and neck, and her ankles tied with white plastic rope suggested restraint. Adjacent to the woman's remains was a sleeping bag, under which lay a small brown dog, seemingly shot. The burnt SUV's license plate traced back to Tina Anderson, leading to the grim assumption that her remains were discovered in the garage. The arrival of the medical examiner led to the uncovering of a grievous throat injury on turning the body over. The news shattered Brett upon receiving a call from the police, informing him of Tina's death under violent conditions. The revelation left Anderson reeling, unable to grasp the brutal fate met by his wife in the garage, potentially alongside his best friend, amidst unknown whereabouts of Jim and his children. Brett's sense of powerlessness was profound, tormented by his absence during his family's time of need. Learning that the dog involved was Callie, their cherished family pet, compounded the horror, making it unfathomable that such cruelty could be inflicted on Tina and Callie. Upon initiating their investigation, detectives discovered that the victim, Tina Anderson, a 42-year-old woman, had a 16-year-old daughter named Hannah and an 8-year-old son, Ethan, both of whom were missing. The charred residence was owned by a close family acquaintance, 40-year-old James DiMaggio, who had also vanished, along with his blue Nissan bearing California license plates. Brett immediately boarded the earliest flight to San Diego. Although he was reluctant to cast suspicion on his best friend, the fact that Tina's body was found in his garage and both children and Jim were unaccounted for, along with his vehicle, left him with little choice. Despite Anderson's reluctance to consider other theories, the police combed the vicinity of Jim's home, while neighbors recounted sightings of Tina, Ethan, and the family dog entering his residence the evening prior. Jim had hosted a farewell party that night before his planned move to Texas. Concurrently in California, the Amber Alert system was activated, a national mechanism for broadcasting child abduction notices. The community rapidly rallied on social media to disseminate the alert. Marissa, Hannah's closest friend, along with other schoolmates, spearheaded the distribution of flyers in the local area, clinging to the hope that Hannah and Ethan would be safely recovered. Nevertheless, during a meticulous examination of Jim's incinerated home, fire investigators stumbled upon a ghastly find: another cadaver, severely charred. This victim was identified as a child, believed to be Ethan. Upon receiving this dreadful news, Brett was initially in disbelief. However, the realization that his young friend would never return home overwhelmed him, leading to a breakdown. Clinging to the hope that Hannah might still be alive became his sole consolation. Brett had already endured the loss of his wife, son, and even their beloved pet. The thought of also losing his daughter was unbearable. If Jim had abducted Hannah following his actions towards Tina and Ethan, she was in grave peril. To pinpoint their whereabouts, detectives questioned every known associate, friend, and relative of both Hannah and Jim. Jim, who had been a cornerstone in the family and a constant in Hannah's life since her birth, treating her as if she were his own, was beyond reproach in the eyes of the extensive Anderson network. The prevailing theory among many was that an outsider had inflicted harm and abducted them, though no one could conjecture on the identity of such a person. By August 5th, both DiMaggio and Hannah remained untraceable, their phones inactive. Media outlets circulated their images along with detailed profiles, appealing to the public to report any sightings. California's alert system was fully operational, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children ready to broadcast alerts nationwide. With no alternative suspects, Jim DiMaggio was the focal point of the investigation. The discovery of several trash bags filled with new camping gear in the attic, linked to the garage, hinted at preparations for survival in the wilderness. The find included a camping stove, the remains of a hunting knife's packaging, and a box of handcuffs, intensifying the belief that Jim had escaped with Hannah to a secluded spot, possibly aiming for Mexico or Canada. The search also uncovered explosives, gasoline containers, a tarp, and numerous letters from Hannah that Jim had preserved for undisclosed reasons. The specifics of these letters were kept confidential by the authorities. The investigation sought to unravel Jim's motives for possibly abducting Hannah. It soon emerged that the fire was set deliberately, involving an explosive mechanism with detonators, indicating premeditation. Jim's acquaintances confirmed his proficiency in outdoor survival, suggesting he might be evading capture in the wilderness with Hannah. The case garnered international attention in 2013, leading to a global search for the teenager. At a press conference, Brett directly addressed Jim DiMaggio, pleading for his daughter's release. He implored his once close friend to spare Hannah, having already taken so much from him. The inquiry revealed surveillance footage from the Pine Valley checkpoint, a mere 22 minutes from Jim's residence, capturing Jim's vehicle with Hannah visibly seated next to him. This sighting on August 4th, prior to the fire but after Hannah's last known appearance, offered a glimmer of hope for her well-being. By the time DiMaggio had collected Hannah from middle school at 4 p.m., their phones were already switched off, despite a record of 13 calls between them up to that point. The media speculated wildly about a possible pact between Jim and Hannah, fueled by the discovery of her letters in his attic and their shared outings. Marissa recounted a telling incident to investigators, describing a car ride where Jim expressed discomfort over their teenage banter, confessing his deep affection for Hannah in a manner suggesting he wished for a relationship with her if circumstances were different. This narrative painted Jim as deeply infatuated, possibly driven to extreme measures as Hannah grew older and began distancing herself. the theory posited that Jim's actions, including the arson, were motivated by a desire to isolate Hannah completely. Tina's untimely demise might have been collateral, possibly witnessing a compromising situation between Jim and Hannah, making her an obstacle to Jim's delusional aspirations. A significant development in the investigation unfolded in Idaho on Wednesday, August 7th. The day prior, a group consisting of a former sheriff, Mark John, aged 71, his spouse, and another couple, all seasoned in navigating challenging terrains, went horseback riding in the remote reaches of the Boise National Forest, specifically an area known as the River of No Return. It was there they stumbled upon two peculiar hikers, an adult male and a young female. The duo stood out for their unsuitable attire for the wilderness setting. The girl appeared to be in pajamas and tennis shoes, and the man donned a gray sweatshirt with sneakers, neither equipped with rain gear. Their campsite was ill-chosen, located on a ridge devoid of water sources, signaling their inexperience with hiking. The encounter was marked by the man's protective gesture, pulling the girl close, and their deliberate avoidance of interaction, underscored by the presence of a cat the girl held, adding to their oddity in such a setting. Unbeknownst to the riders at the time, these were the very individuals at the center of a nationwide search. Only after returning home and catching a news report on Jim and Hannah did the realization dawn on them, prompting an immediate alert to law enforcement. This clue was pivotal, especially since a cat had been part of DiMaggio's household, a shared pet between Hannah and him, missing post the fire tragedy. On Friday, a substantial force of law enforcement personnel converged on Cascade, Idaho, targeting the vicinity of the River of No Return. This terrain, unreachable by vehicle, spans millions of hectares filled with dense forests, towering mountains, and deep gullies, effectively cutting off any cell phone signal, a perfect haven for evading detection. The search team, composed of state police, FBI agents, and local law enforcement, meticulously scoured over 400 miles of this harsh landscape. Amidst a camouflage of branches, leaves, and assorted natural cover, they located a blue Nissan, conspicuously without its license plates. However, the vehicle was quickly identified as belonging to DiMaggio. By Saturday, August 10, 2013, an aerial reconnaissance mission by a U.S. Marshals Service aircraft over the forest north of Morche Lake led to a breakthrough. The crew identified a two-person blue tent and two individuals beside the lake, one man disrobing his shirt and a female figure close by. During the flyover, the pilot observed the woman signaling desperately with a piece of fabric, aiming to catch the attention of the plane above. This pair was none other than Jim DiMaggio and Hannah Anderson, marking a pivotal moment in the search operation. The FBI's hostage rescue squad positioned themselves stealthily on the terrain, biding their time to retrieve Hannah from her abductor. Timing was of the essence. As dusk approached and the shadows lengthened, the squad made their move. Jim ventured into the forest to collect more wood for the fire, and Hannah, spotting her rescuers, dashed towards them. DiMaggio, catching sight of his escaping hostage, discharged his weapon, leading the squad to respond in kind. Jim was hit by multiple bullets, succumbing to his injuries. Upon reaching safety, Hannah appeared unharmed but was visibly shaken. She grasped onto the agents, her gaze fixed and her frame quivering. The rescue team promptly flew her to a nearby hospital for immediate evaluation and to reunite her with her father, who had rushed to Idaho. Before Brett's arrival, the FBI disclosed to Hannah the tragic news that her mother and brother had also fallen victim to the crime, perishing in the blaze. Following this, Hannah was prepared to share her account with the authorities. With Jim now deceased, corroborating the exact events became impossible. Hannah recounted that everything began on August 3rd, when Jim organized a goodbye gathering before his departure to Texas. Tina, Ethan, and their dog visited his home, while Hannah herself wished to skip this final encounter. Fearing the potential damage to the long-standing friendship between her parents and DiMaggio, she kept silent about Jim's messages to her on social media, where he veiled his emotions with purported concern. Discovering that Jim, not her mother, was coming to pick her up made her feel sick. In the vehicle, Jim struggled to locate where he was supposed to meet her, prompting Hannah to call him multiple times to direct him. Their interaction was lighthearted, filled with laughter and jokes. Yet upon entering DiMaggio's residence, Hannah noticed the absence of her mother and brother, despite their belongings being scattered around, including her mother's purse with money and cards strewn about. Sensing something amiss, her alarm grew as DiMaggio presented her with handcuffs. The Jim she knew, a longtime family friend, seemed unrecognizable, his eyes void of emotion, as if possessed. He reassured her that Tina and Ethan were safe in the garage with the dog and urged her not to worry. After forcing Hannah to ingest several pills, she eventually lost consciousness. Awakening in Jim's car amidst Red Bull cans signified a night spent driving. Shortly after, she passed out again, believed to have been sedated with a sleeping medication. Hannah described to investigators Jim's threats of retribution if she attempted to signal anyone, instilling fear of making any attempt in the forest. Jim monitored her closely, even during moments requiring privacy. Escape seemed implausible. The rain, her inappropriate attire for prolonged forest exposure, and the pain from carrying a heavy backpack deterred her. Unfamiliar with survival in the wilderness, she felt utterly hopeless. However, seizing an opportunity when Jim was obscured by trees, she signaled to a passing Marshal's service plane. The narrative questioned why Hannah was in pajamas after being at school, leaving this detail unexplained. Following several days in the hospital, she returned to San Diego with her father. The circumstances surrounding the shootout that culminated in her rescue remained undisclosed, sparking public speculation and critique, with some questioning Hannah's decisions and others offering support. The Anderson family faced the challenge of shielding Hannah from intrusive media. This tale left many pondering unanswered questions. Despite his immense loss, Brett Anderson remained a pillar of strength, finding comfort in witnessing his daughter's continued growth and pursuit of a fulfilling life. The holiday is over, yet its reverberations linger in the souls of the Hutchings family. Halloween stands as the sole evening annually when creatures benignly wander amongst us. It's an occasion where all don costumes and masks, embarking on a playful venture. But consider if beneath one of those disguises lurks a genuinely malevolent being, intent on transforming nightmares into actuality. Nicole Marie Hutchings, affectionately called Nikki by her close ones, was born in San Francisco, California, on the 15th of June, 1983. Her biological father was replaced by a stepfather, James Hutchings, yet their bond was so profound it mirrored that of a natural father and daughter. From her early years, James nurtured Nicole as if she were his own, earning the endearing title Dad from her. As time passed, 2 additional children, Amanda and Timothy, were welcomed into the Hutchings fold. Following James's departure from the Marine Corps in 1987, he, along with his spouse Robin, chose to bring up their offspring in a more serene setting. They relocated to Bend, Oregon, where Nikki experienced her first snowfall. Nestled in the core of Oregon's Cascade Mountains, Bend boasted an idyllic blend of outdoor adventures, including skiing, mountain biking, and trekking, alongside a flourishing arts community, replete with a dynamic arts scene, a burgeoning craft beer sector, and an array of gastronomic venues. This juxtaposition is evident in the town's scenery, where quaint brick edifices and verdant tree-fringed avenues grace the downtown district, and at a distance, lofty pines and rugged mountain summits prevail. It was in this locale that the Hutchings clan found their home, settling into an idyllic 3-bedroom, 2-bath residence perched along the Deschutes River's edge, with the river flowing directly into their backyard, presenting endless fishing prospects. Once, Nikki's parents brought the young girl to Drake Park, a favorite among the city's green spaces, renowned for its array of events throughout the year, including musical evenings and open-air cinema showings. It also served as an ideal spot for tranquil nature strolls. It was in this setting that Nikki, upon seeing duck sculptures for the first time and struggling with her early speech, affectionately dubbed her grandfather Grandpa Duck. As Nikki matured, the park continued to hold a special place in her heart, remaining a preferred spot in the city. Eager for school, Nikki looked forward to acquiring new knowledge. Additionally, she had a passion for hiking, crafting, and composing poems. She was a student at Mountain View Middle School, where she was well liked by many peers, though her frankness occasionally led to confrontations, including one significant altercation that resulted in her expulsion. After finishing her schooling in 2004, Nikki made her way back home. The Hutchings family cherished their moments together in their abode. By then, they had relocated to a comparable 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom residence, situated a 15-minute drive from their previous location, in a more densely populated suburban area. Positioned at the end of a cul-de-sac, the Hutchinson home boasted stunning views of the mountains. With the annual celebration of All Saints' Day, or Halloween as it's widely recognized, on the horizon, the children of Bend, akin to their counterparts across the United States, delighted in dressing up for trick-or-treating. Nearly every home was adorned with decorations, and residents prepared sweets in anticipation, warmly welcoming the small witches and phantoms who would visit. By this period, the Hutchings' offspring had matured, finding themselves more captivated by gatherings and celebratory events than the tradition of trick-or-treating. Nikki had reached the age of 21, Amanda was 17, and Timmy had just celebrated his 13th birthday. On the evening of Sunday, October 31st, 2004, Amanda was preparing for her shift at a nearby department store, planning to conclude her duties around 8 p.m. Lacking a driver's license, she depended on her parents or Nikki for a ride home. Despite the store's proximity, Amanda hesitated to trek back alone after dusk, particularly on Halloween. Hence, she requested Nikki for a pickup, but Nikki had plans to stay in, distributing sweets. Their dad, Jim, then a bus operator, offered to fetch her, prioritizing his daughter's safety above all. Before departing, Nicole, with a grave expression, sought a moment to discuss something significant with Amanda upon her return, hinting at another bout of her imaginative notions. The day unfolded ordinarily enough, with Robin and Nikki engaging joyfully in candy distribution to the visiting youngsters, reminiscent of the times the Hutchings themselves went trick-or-treating. Now, finding amusement in their role reversal, they relished the experience. After Jim came home and dined, he left to collect Amanda and attend to some chores. By 10 p.m., when the doorbell rang again, it seemed too late for youthful jests. With Robin occupied, Nikki answered the door, only to find a pleasant surprise. Several of her friends stood there, en route to a nearby Halloween festivity at a friend's place, eager for Nikki to join. Thrilled at the prospect, Nikki was all set to partake in the holiday merriment. Nikki informed her mother of her plans to enjoy the evening with her companions. Robin, undisturbed by her daughter's autonomous nature, trusted Nikki's responsible demeanor. She bid her a wonderful time, sending her off to the celebration with ease of mind. Unbeknownst to her, this farewell would mark the final occasion she'd witnessed the joyful grin of her eldest child. The memory of Nikki's final Halloween will eternally resonate with her family. The celebration was brimming with both acquaintances and unknown faces, all seemingly enjoying the revelry. Nikki, having been informed of the event last minute, attended in her regular attire, lacking the time for elaborate preparations. The atmosphere was charged with boisterous music, with attendees engaging in typical youthful merriment, drinking, dancing, and reveling deep into the early hours of November 1st. As the spectral night's excitement faded and life's regular rhythm resumed, the Hutchings family too began their day, immersed in routine morning activities. It was during this time that Jim realized Nikki's absence. Her bedroom was empty, a stark contrast to the last memory he had of her, diligently filling out a job application. Returning the previous evening with Amanda, he had presumed Nikki was asleep. Upon learning from Robin that Nikki had ventured to a Halloween festivity, Jim initially thought she might be recuperating from the night's excesses at a friend's house, expecting her return or a call by midday. However, as daylight waned and normalcy enveloped the town, Nikki's presence remained conspicuously absent. Her belongings, including her purse and identification, lay undisturbed in her room, a silent testament to her unanticipated departure. Concern deeply rooted in their hearts, her parents initiated a series of calls to Nikki's friends, desperate for any clue of her whereabouts. The evening was consumed with efforts to trace her, a prelude to the harrowing decision of involving law enforcement. Despite their exhaustive inquiries, Nikki's location remained a mystery. At this juncture, the Hutchings family was overwhelmed by a foreboding sense of dread, prompting them to contact the Bend Police Department. At the station, they were informed that Halloween night is notoriously one of the worst nights of the year due to a significant surge in criminal activity. The period is rife with car break-ins, vandalism, alcohol-related offenses, violence, and even fatal crimes. The police typically do not immediately respond to reports of missing adults, as many return after a short period. However, the fact that Nikki's money and identification were still at home raised concerns. The Bend police were aware that Nikki was 21 years old, stood at 5 feet 5 inches, weighed 159 pounds, and had chestnut hair and blue eyes. Additional unique identifiers included a small gap between her front teeth, a pierced tongue, and tattoos of a rose and a dolphin on the back of her left shoulder. She was last seen wearing a dark burgundy polo shirt with an emblem, black pants, and white tennis shoes. Detective Brian Kendall from the Bend Police Department met with the Hutchington family to compile a comprehensive report. He spoke with Robin, Amanda, and Jim, who shared their insights. Amanda mentioned that her sister wanted to discuss something serious with her that evening. The parents informed the detective about Nikki's ex-boyfriend, Bobby. Initially, he was well-liked by the family, appearing very charming and fitting in well, but over time they began to suspect that he was concealing his true nature, especially concerning Nikki. Detective Kendall resolved to pursue the individual for any further details. He intended to question Mickey's acquaintances regarding the whereabouts of the Halloween celebration, including inquiries about the organizer and all attendees. Concurrently, the Hutchings family was engulfed in distress, given the absence of any updates on Nikki for more than a day. Upon meeting Bobby, the detectives inquired about Nikki. He insisted he was not monitoring his former partner, noting their separation had occurred just the weekend before. Despite the detective's skepticism, a lie detector test indicated he was truthful. It was later established that he had an alibi for the night of Halloween, prompting the authorities to shift their focus elsewhere. The Bend police force released a statement soliciting any information regarding Nikki Hutchings, urging the public to reach out to Detective Kendall. A woman named Mary came forward with crucial information. She mentioned her cohabitants, Lauren Bowers and Craig Whiting, had hosted the Halloween festivity Nikki attended. Bowers had a girlfriend with 2 children. One was 6 years old, and the other was 4. Mickey would constantly come over to look after them, and that's how she met Mary. At the party was nothing unusual about it. Many people came and went during the night, and some brought friends along. At least the detectives now had 2 people they could contact. Quickly obtaining the address, the police officers went to Lauren and Craig to find out more details. That's how they spoke with Bowers' 30-year-old girlfriend. Craig was identified as a close acquaintance of the Hutchings and frequently visited in the evenings to extend party invitations to Mickey. He recalled seeing her last at the party close to midnight, a time when alcohol consumption was rampant, leaving everyone clueless about her subsequent whereabouts. While her friends were deeply concerned for her safety, they remained hopeful for her return. Alas, she had vanished without a trace since the event. Investigators questioned other attendees of the gathering, yet no one could precisely recall the moment of her departure. It seemed as though the young woman had abruptly vanished into thin air. The police pondered various scenarios. Had Nikki exited the premises by herself that evening? Was she under the influence, or had she been kidnapped? Could there have been an individual with nefarious intentions lurking? However, with no definitive answers at hand, they proceeded with their probe, deciding to broaden the search to include areas beyond the state lines. Nikki's photograph, together with comprehensive details regarding her vanishing, was circulated among law enforcement agencies nationwide. With the absence of fresh leads, investigators opted to scrutinize the backgrounds of the residents of the home where the festivity was held, in addition to the attendees. It was imperative to begin their inquiry from some point. Craig was found to have a clean criminal history, whereas Lauren Bowers appeared to have a questionable incident related to Nikki. The revelation was shocking. It emerged that the man had been a convicted offender a decade ago. Lauren had faced accusations of contributing to the delinquency of minors. Now, age 34, he openly acknowledged his previous wrongdoing to Detective Kendall, offering his cooperation in the search for Nikki as a gesture of his reformed character. This information was disconcerting, yet no direct link or proof suggested Lauren's involvement in Nikki's disappearance. The investigation was still in its preliminary phase of collecting information. In the meantime, Nikki's relatives initiated a community search in Bend. They disseminated leaflets bearing her image and particulars, engaged with local broadcasters, and reiterated their appeal for any leads to be reported to the authorities. Subsequent reports claimed sightings of the young woman in various locales within the city, albeit without verification. Nonetheless, these accounts provided the Hutchings family with a glimmer of hope. Jim, employed as a bus operator, would meticulously survey Drake Park, Nikki's cherished locale, each time he drove by, in the hopes of spotting her. Accepting the grim reality of her absence was a challenge for the family, who clung to the hope of her return. Each knock at the door raised expectations that it might be Nikki, yet it never was. The situation then took a grim twist. An informant disclosed to the police that an individual known as Spider had admitted to his acquaintances that he was responsible for Nicole's murder and had concealed her remains on his property. His actual identity was Danny Shane, a felon affiliated with a local gang dubbed the Park Rats, notorious for their criminal activities in Bend, especially around Drake Park. Nikki and Danny Shane were familiar with each other, having been classmates in middle school, though Spider had undergone significant changes since those days. When interrogated, he asserted that he had encountered the young woman a few weeks prior, aligning with the timeline of her vanishing. After successfully completing a polygraph examination, he was exonerated and released. The aerial units of the Bend Police Department were deployed to scrutinize Danny's land from the sky in search of any signs of soil disturbance indicative of a burial site, but their search yielded no results. As days turned into weeks and then months, the Hutchings prepared themselves for the possibility of receiving dire news, with the likelihood of Nikki being found alive dwindling. Nikki's 13-year-old sibling, Tim, who looked up to her immensely, was particularly devastated, leaving the family in a state of disarray. In a subsequent development, the Portland Police Department in Oregon reached out to the Hutchings family. The call they received was one no family ever wishes to get. They were informed about the discovery of a body that bore a resemblance to Nikki, and they were summoned for identification. The news sent shockwaves through the family, but Jim had one pressing inquiry: whether the deceased had a dolphin tattoo on her left shoulder. The agonizing wait for a response seemed endless, with the family grappling with the possibility of Nikki's demise. The moment the officer informed Jim that the discovered body lacked the tattoo, a fleeting relief washed over the Hutchings. Nonetheless, they were painfully aware that this meant another family would soon be confronted with heartbreaking news concerning their loved one. Investigators monitored Nikki's financial and digital footprints, including her credit card, bank account, and cell phone. After months of perseverance, they were alerted to activity on one of Nikki's cards, igniting a flicker of hope that she could be alive. This hope was swiftly dashed when Nikki's mother, Robin, disclosed she had been using her daughter's credit card, dashing any renewed hope. As time progressed, interactions with the detectives became less frequent, reflecting the stagnation of the case, and life for the Hutchings seemed to pause. Amanda pursued her high school studies and had applied to colleges, including the University of Minnesota, where she awaited acceptance letters. These aspirations now felt insignificant in the shadow of her sister's disappearance. However, she was later informed of her acceptance to the University of Minnesota with a full scholarship. Despite the joy this brought, she found herself unable to leave her family during such a distressing period. The narrative surrounding Nikki Hutchings's disappearance only unfolded after 3 painstaking years. It became evident that someone was concealing a vital piece of information, possessing full knowledge of the events that transpired, but lacking the courage to disclose the truth. In March 2007, a woman known as Jenny entered the Bend police station, seeking to speak with the detective leading the Hutchings investigation. As an old acquaintance of Nikki and the former girlfriend of Lauren Bowers, with whom she had 2 children, Jenny was driven by their rocky past and subsequent breakup to share what she knew. Initially interviewed after Nikki vanished, she had lied to protect herself. Jenny disclosed that Lauren, her ex, confessed to ending Nikki's life, though at that time there was no concrete proof or remains to corroborate his admission. The detectives devised a strategy, persuading Jenny to covertly record a conversation with Lauren by wearing a wire and probing him about Nikki. The meeting was set in a park where Jenny, under immense pressure, inquired about Nikki's fate. Lauren, initially wary, eventually confided in Jenny due to her previous silence. He justified his actions by alleging Nikki was a threat to their relationship, and he could not risk returning to jail. Jenny's persistent questioning nearly compromised the operation, yet managed to secure Lauren's confession. Lauren was apprehended on March 12th, a measure taken partly to safeguard Jenny from potential repercussions. Further investigations into Lauren's past unveiled 2 prior convictions for sexual assault, resulting in a 2-year prison sentence. His victims were aged between 13 and 16. Post-release in 1997, Lauren briefly evaded his parole obligations and was later convicted for unlawful possession of a firearm, theft, and lying to the police. Upon arrest, an emotional Lauren denied any involvement in Nikki's disappearance, accusing his friend Craig Whiting of framing him, a claim that ultimately proved true. Craig Whiting, who came to pick up Nikki on that Halloween evening, was a close family friend of the Hutchings, having lived under the same roof with them for some time. He took a deep breath and stated that Lauren had asked him to help get rid of the girl. Craig said that Nikki had started spreading rumors about Lauren, alleging that he had inappropriately touched one of the children she was babysitting. If this were to come out, it would land Bowers back in prison. The children had told Nikki about Lauren's inappropriate actions and how he had photographed one of them without clothing. It was a serious accusation that could have severe consequences. Nikki informed the child's mother about the incident and then went further by filing a formal complaint with the Oregon Department of Human Services. Lauren understood that this could land him back in prison and decided to take drastic action. But how did Craig fit into all of this? It turned out that Craig had a disturbing childhood experience that had a profound impact on his psyche. When he was 11 years old, his mother's partner beat her to death and then hid her body in the basement under their trailer, where they lived next to the decomposing remains for several weeks. Perhaps this left a mark on Craig's entire life. However, he justified his actions regarding Nikki by claiming that Lauren was like a brother to him. If a brother asked for help, he felt obliged to do everything for him. It took a couple of days before Craig agreed to show detectives where they had buried Nikki's body. This helped him avoid the death penalty, but he showed no remorse or compassion. It was a very remote area in the middle of the forest, about 20 miles from the Halloween party location. Craig led the police to a spot amidst the trees where, according to him, Nikki met her demise. In a shallow grave, officers found what they believed to be Mickey Hutchings's remains. Nikki had done everything possible to protect an innocent child and ensure their safety, only to encounter the monster who would likely silence her rather than face the consequences of his despicable actions. As early as October 2004, they, along with their best friend Craig, devised a plan to get rid of Hutchings. This led them to organize a large Halloween party. On the eve of the incident, they journeyed to a secluded spot and excavated a shallow grave, approximately 3 feet in depth. During Halloween, Craig enticed Mickey from her residence. At the celebration, they incapacitated the young woman by spiking her beverage with a painkiller, leaving her scarcely able to control her legs. She was utterly incapacitated. Companions placed her in a vehicle, with Lauren at the wheel, transporting her to the predetermined grave site. Nikki, feeble, was escorted to a makeshift burial pit, where Bowers delivered a blow to her skull using a bat adorned with a weighty metallic end. Craig believed a single hit would render her unconscious, yet it merely caused Nicole to stumble, prompting her to attempt to stand. Subsequently, Lauren seized a branch from White, assaulting her repeatedly until she fell into unconsciousness. Before Nicole ceased breathing, they disrobed her and cast her into the trench, subsequently covering it with dense soil. The most harrowing aspect of this narrative is that Nikki was still breathing at that juncture, perishing alone in the dense woodland, betrayed by two individuals she considered close on that dread-filled evening. Upon notifying the Hatchings family of Nikki's demise, her parents were astounded. Craig, whom they had welcomed into their home, and Lauren, a companion of Nikki. Jim's memory of identifying his daughter's dolphin insignia at the coroner's office is indelible. He expressed a desire to personally address these culprits, sparing the expense to taxpayers. Regrettably, legal constraints made this impossible. Nearly a year would pass before Lauren and Craig admitted guilt for the savage attack, each receiving a sentence of lifetime imprisonment without the chance for parole. The very nightmare they dreaded, which led to Nicole Hatching's death in an effort to shield another's offspring, had come to pass. Now, these fiends are condemned to recall the young woman who attained retribution, even beyond the grave. Diamond Bradley, much like numerous others, adored social media during her teenage years, yet the issue lies in the fact that it's impossible to discern whether the individual on the opposite end of the screen is a friend, or if beneath a charming facade lurks an actual monster. Diamond Marsh Bradley entered the world on March 21, 2001, in Clarksville, Tennessee. She was the younger sibling to Daquan, who was 3 years older than her. At a certain juncture, their parents, Doris and Philip, opted for separation, prompting Doris to seek a more tranquil and secure environment for her children, away from the urban chaos. She moved Daquan and Diamond to a small town named Spring Valley in Illinois, where they had relatives, allowing the children to be raised alongside their cousins. Spring Valley is a quaint town situated along the Illinois River, with its population in 2002 barely reaching 5,000 inhabitants, and it has seen little growth since. The town lacked large malls or towering buildings. Instead, its residents built a closely knit community reliant on mutual support. Doris secured a position as a cook in a nursing home, where she dedicated over 15 years of service, ensuring her children had their needs met. As they matured, and Doris couldn't always be present, Daquan stepped into the role of guardian, mentor, and elder brother for Diamond, forging a deep bond that eventually evolved into a strong friendship. Diamond also spent considerable time with her cousin Giovanna, their resemblance so striking that many mistook them for twins. Later, Doris welcomed 2 more children into the family, a girl named Malia and a boy named Quentin. Despite Spring Valley's ideal setting for raising a family, its major drawback was the lack of activities for teenagers. Diamond was a quintessential girl who cherished singing, dancing, engaging in play with her siblings, and staging photo shoots. Additionally, she devoted numerous hours online as social media and smartphones gained widespread acceptance among the youth. Gradually, she took to actively seeking out internet users for communication, companionship, and amusement. By 2014, at around 13 years of age, she began to actively post, sharing a wide array of content on her page. Diamond disclosed everything from details about her personal relationships and invitations to socialize, to her affection for her family and adulations for her mother, whom she deemed the best in the world. At times, she would seek guidance or simply share her musings. Throughout her adolescence, Diamond navigated the emotional shifts typical of the journey from childhood to adulthood. There were moments when Diamond felt an overwhelming sense of distrust or a compelling need to confide in someone. Although Doris and other family members engaged with her posts, Diamond often yearned for the attention of fellow social media users. With limited activities in Spring Valley, her interest in boys began to blossom, and social media served as a sort of digital journal for her. She frequently updated her thoughts, posting multiple times daily. Through her posts, one could easily follow the evolving life and thoughts of the teenager during this time. She cherished and esteemed her family, yet at times felt profound ennui, seeking someone from the online community for a conversation. She candidly confessed her lack of friendships. She yearned for affection, craved attention, and shared her deepest feelings with anyone who would read her posts. Indeed, social media represented merely a fraction of a person's actual life. However, it offered a glimpse into the concerns and thoughts that preoccupied the young woman. At that period, Diamond was a high school student, and she had recently started dating Nicholas Nelson. They formed an adorable pair, spending ample time together and appearing genuinely smitten. The young woman was not fond of school. In the autumn of 2017, she aimed to complete her graduation through a special program by passing exams. She possessed a deep sense of empathy and aspired to a career in nursing. Though many viewed Diamond as youthful, her ambitions were significant. On January 23, 2018, the Bradley household buzzed with friends and family as they gathered to celebrate Doris's birthday. The night was brimming with affection and happiness, highlighted by a festive cake, tunes, and the sheer pleasure of being among dear ones. Unbeknownst to Doris, in less than a day, her life was poised to shatter. That night, the partygoers started leaving at 10 p.m., leading the celebrant to inform her daughter of her bedtime plans. Diamond bid her mother a good night and proceeded to take a shower. Typically, Doris would rise just before 7 a.m., prepare the morning meal, and see the younger kids off to school. She expected her oldest daughter to be awake by this time, yet she was conspicuously absent. The bedroom upstairs was vacant as well. At first, Doris was not alarmed, understanding her daughter's penchant for morning coffee runs to the nearby gas station. However, as time passed without Diamond's return, her worry intensified. Diamond lacked personal transportation, and the weather outside was a mix of wet snow and wind, hardly conducive for a stroll. When Doris attempted to reach her daughter by phone, it went directly to voicemail, an unusual occurrence. By 8:30 a.m., Dequan, who had been living apart due to his hectic schedule, came over as they had planned to rendezvous. The absence of Diamond's responses to her family's persistent texts and calls was alarming, especially since she was known to avoid causing them undue stress. Their concern deepened over the hours, and despite reaching out to all her acquaintances, no one had any information. Dequan drove through the town in search of Diamond, but their small community offered few hiding spots. Doris was overwhelmed by a spectrum of feelings, from dread to fury, fearing the worst had befallen her daughter. Never had Diamond stayed away this long without any word. The distress became unbearable for Doris, who, after depleting every option, reported her daughter as missing to the police at 6 p.m. The law enforcement team prioritized gathering details about Diamond's mobile usage and reached out to her cellular provider to pinpoint the phone's last known location via cell tower signals. A swift response revealed the device's final activity at 7:18 a.m., located 5 miles northwest of a tower in Toluca, Illinois. This information, however, only offered a broad search area without precise coordinates, leaving her whereabouts ambiguous. Following this, the phone either depleted its battery or was deliberately shut off, as there was no subsequent activity or social media engagement from Diamond. Her mother clung to the hope that Diamond's cousin Giovanna, with whom Diamond had spent the previous evening communicating, might hold vital information. Diamond often confided her innermost thoughts and plans in Giovanna, but hadn't specified her intentions for the next morning. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Giovanna chose to reveal a critical secret to Doris. Diamond possessed a second phone, unknown to her family, for internet access via Wi-Fi, discovered by Daquan in a dresser drawer, password protected and without a cellular plan. This revelation took Doris by surprise, unaware of her daughter's secret phone. Recognizing the urgency, she immediately brought the device to the police, hoping it might yield clues to her daughter's disappearance. Investigators deduced that the hidden phone was used for activities that wouldn't have received Doris's approval. Once they bypassed the lock screen, they encountered additional security measures. Each app required its own password. Despite this, notifications visible on the lock screen indicated several individuals inviting Diamond to meet. The investigation revealed that the 16-year-old had been using the device to interact on dating platforms, a revelation that shocked Doris but was not unknown to Giovanna. Diamond had taken precautions, advising her cousin to alert her at the first sign of danger, knowing the risks involved with her secret engagements. Doris had always been stringent about dating, especially aware of her daughter's inclination towards older individuals and the dangers of online interactions. She emphasized caution and the importance of skepticism when dealing with strangers, aware of her daughter's tendency to misrepresent her age. Despite warnings from her mother and Daquan about the perils of rushing into adulthood, Diamond crafted an arm-line persona that suggested she was older. As the search for Diamond continued, law enforcement expanded their efforts beyond the digital realm. They canvassed the Bradleys' neighborhood, speaking with locals, checking nearby businesses, and gathering surveillance footage in hopes of uncovering any leads. At Diamond's regular coffee stop, only one low-resolution camera provided any footage, capturing a nondescript dark vehicle and its adult male driver. With scant evidence to go on, authorities concentrated on this individual, meticulously analyzing the video in search of any detail that might lead to Diamond's whereabouts. The girl's brother set out to nearby towns to put up flyers with a photo and description of his sister. For some reason, he was convinced that she had been abducted and taken out of town. Daquan knew that time was running out and they needed to hurry. He blamed himself for oversleeping that morning and not coming home earlier, as he could have prevented Diamond's disappearance. On January 25th, Doris and Jasmine, another of Diamond's cousins, went to the police to provide important information about Diamond. It turned out that the missing girl wasn't just getting acquainted with boys. Unfortunately, she had gotten involved in something even more dangerous. Jasmine explained that on dating sites, Diamond noticed pop-up advertisements offering meetings with men on a commercial basis. It was a kind of business, and the high school student was very intrigued. She wanted to understand how it worked and learned that some men paid women to meet with them. No one knew how curious Diamond was or how long this had been going on, but obviously, the girl had placed advertisements of herself on adult websites, which was one of the reasons why there were so many notifications on her lock screen. Almost all of these messages were from unfamiliar men who had either responded to the advertisement or her profile on dating sites. Doris felt like a bad mother. She couldn't even imagine in her worst nightmares that her underage daughter would decide to earn money this way. But Daquan saw things differently. His mother always knew how to balance strictness with giving her children some freedom. Diamond likely didn't grasp the gravity of engaging in such transactions. She might have assumed she'd be compensated for merely spending time on dates, particularly with older men who she thought would be more financially generous. At heart, she was exploring life with the naivety of youth, unaware of the dangers lurking on those platforms, unseen threats posed by individuals seeking to exploit the most vulnerable. The allure of easy money for social outings was a dangerous curiosity. Law enforcement was aware that many youths in Spring Valley found themselves ensnared in monotony, with their primary pastime being the digital world, a realm their guardians scarcely understood. This disconnect left many parents oblivious to the digital hazards their children navigated daily. In response to the escalating concern, the local police sought the FBI's assistance for advanced resources to access and analyze data from Diamond's primary phone, aiming to reconstruct her movements on the day she vanished. This collaboration bore fruit, as they managed to chart the route taken by Diamond, suggesting she was in a vehicle, given the rapid pace of movement detected. An extensive review of surveillance footage from the area identified 13 vehicles, yet the poor quality of the images thwarted efforts to discern license plate numbers. An inventive approach saw the deployment of a patrol car equipped with a dash cam at a strategic intersection, which, after 2 days, helped filter out vehicles frequently traversing the locale, isolating a red pickup and a black Jeep that ceased to appear thereafter. Without immediate evidence to prioritize these vehicles, the police opted to methodically narrow their focus, beginning with these two. Further surveillance linked the black Jeep to another location along Diamond's last known trajectory, sharpening the investigation's focus on this particular vehicle. Simultaneously, detectives delved into Diamond's digital interactions, scrutinizing communications on her dating applications and social media platforms. A pivotal discovery was the last message Diamond sent on the morning of her disappearance, directed to a 26-year-old known as Gerald, or Jay, among his circle. In the course of the investigation, the individual in question, Jay, acknowledged a romantic connection with Diamond, but clarified that he had ceased contact upon learning her true age. On the morning of January 24th, at 6 a.m., Diamond had invited him to meet at an IHOP restaurant. Almost immediately, she retracted the invitation, apologizing and claiming the message was intended for someone else. Jay responded with a benign, smiley face. At 6:40 a.m., a distressing message from Diamond arrived, stating, "I'm dying." Upon discovering that Jay was the last known contact of her 16-year-old daughter, Doris was overcome with rage and despair, confronting him with accusations of harming her child. In her grief, she was prepared to cast blame on any potential suspect. Jay, however, provided a solid alibi, claiming he was home all night engaged in video games, corroborated by a female companion's presence. Initially reluctant under pressure, Jay revealed that this companion was none other than Giovanna, Diamond's cousin, adding a layer of complexity and confusion to the investigation without advancing the search for Diamond. Redirecting their attention back to the black Jeep, investigators uncovered additional surveillance footage capturing the vehicle en route to Putnam County, whereafter Diamond's phone signal vanished, either powered off or battery depleted. This vehicle became a focal point of the investigation, believed to be crucial in uncovering Diamond's fate. Tragically, the urgency of the situation escalated when, on January 27th, 3 days following the report of Diamond's disappearance, the sheriff's office in Putnam County received a significant call before noon, suggesting a grim turn in the ongoing search for the missing girl. A pedestrian strolling down the pebble path in Granville Township spotted the corpse of a young woman in the ditch beside the road. Upon the arrival of the head of Putnam County at the location, it was clear to him that this incident was no mishap. The young woman's life had been deliberately ended by another. The wounds were distributed across her body, on her back, stomach, legs, arms, and hands. She was a young African-American female. The police chief recalled that a young girl fitting her description had been reported missing in Spring Valley, prompting him to make an immediate call there. The area was rural, blanketed in snow at this season, flanked by cornfields on either side of the path. The closest dwelling was a good few miles from the spot. Diamond Bradley's remains were partly submerged in water due to a brook that flowed through the ditch. The defensive injuries made it clear that the girl had resisted fiercely to the very end. In the wake of the grim discovery of Diamond Bradley, the lead detective made the somber journey to the Bradley family home, tasked with the unbearable duty of conveying the tragic news. The moment police appeared at their doorstep around 7 p.m., Doris felt an ominous stir in her heart, a premonition of sorrow. Her breakdown, even before the news was verbalized, spoke volumes of a mother's intuition. The return of Dequan to a home engulfed in grief brought him face to face with a reality far removed from his hopeful assumption of Diamond's return. The crushing weight of the truth, that his sister was found deceased, overwhelmed him to the point of fainting, a testament to the bond and the burden of unfulfilled promises he bore. As the news permeated the small community, every inhabitant was profoundly disturbed. The thought of allowing their children to roam the streets filled them with dread. What if the creature was hiding close by, searching for its next prey? the investigation team intensely scrutinized the black Jeep seen in the security video. To refine their search, the police consulted an automotive shop that specializes in such models. A technician meticulously reviewed the video and confidently pinpointed it as a certain model year of a Jeep Wrangler. Armed with this detail, the officers fed it into their databases, pulling up all the addresses and names of individuals in the vicinity who owned Jeep vehicles fitting that specific profile. After checking with numerous owners of similar Jeeps, the officers reached a home located roughly a few kilometers north of where Diamond's remains were discovered. A lady opened the door, stating that the black Jeep's owner had relocated to a different municipality named Standard, though she lacked any forwarding address. Standard, being merely 2 miles distant and home to about 200 people, made the task of locating the individual seem less daunting. Cruising through the county, the police spotted a black Jeep Wrangler in the driveway of a residence. The car belonged to 26-year-old Richard Henderson, who on January 24th had indeed ventured into Spring Valley, stopping at a gas station opposite the Bradley residence. He was the individual seen in the gas station's surveillance video. Inside the station, he awaited a call from a friend, but departed without the call coming through. The detectives meticulously scrutinized Henderson's behavior, the pauses in his narrative, and his facial cues. Noticing his momentary falter, they queried the name of his friend. He disclosed Diamond, admitting ignorance of her surname. It then became an exercise in investigative prowess. The seasoned detectives adeptly navigated the conversation, coaxing a confession from Richard. He confessed to meeting Diamond that day. Their initial plans aborted. Henderson claimed to have left Diamond at a mobile home community, a location contrary to the direction of Diamond's phone's trajectory. This discrepancy led to suspicions of either phone theft or deceit. Seizing the opportunity to elicit a full admission, the investigators suggested a patrol car ride retracing the path taken by Henderson and Diamond that day. They embarked from the gas station, proceeded past the traffic junction captured on video, over a bridge, and into the pastoral expanses of Panther County. The journey halted where Diamond's phone signal vanished. The only remnants of the young girl were plush toys and synthetic blossoms at her memorial beside the creek bed, transforming the scene entirely. Diamond's memory was eternally preserved by her loved ones, the vibrant flowers contrasting starkly with the surrounding snowy white terrain. These items, much like Diamond herself, were out of place. The minor, delicate girl was abandoned in that ravine, her vitality ebbing away. Upon the detective questioning Richard about his recognition of the site, he lost his composure, tears streaming down his face. The detective, seizing the emotional moment, urged him to disclose the events. Henderson, overwhelmed, averted his gaze from the memorial, sobbing. His account was succinct. Their visit to the secluded area was for an intimate encounter. Afterwards, when Henderson asked her to leave the car, she refused, brandishing a knife instead. A struggle ensued, with Richard claiming self-defense. He asserted that in an attempt to deflect her knife-wielding hand, the blade accidentally penetrated her abdomen. Despite this, Diamond allegedly remained aggressive. Richard admitted to disarming and striking her possibly twice in purported self-defense before leaving her in the ditch. Nonetheless, the autopsy contradicted his narrative, revealing over 20 stab wounds on Diamond, some even on her back. Standing at nearly 6 feet tall and double Diamond's weight, who was just shy of 5 feet, Henderson's explanation was implausible. He was fully grown, confronting a child. By the time they commenced their search, Diamond had already passed away. At the service, more than 200 individuals gathered, encompassing family, friends, peers, and educators from Spring Valley High School. Opting for cremation, Doris wished for Diamond to remain perpetually close to her. The notion of leaving her daughter in a graveyard was unbearable for her. Thus, she carried Diamond's urn everywhere, including to the courtroom during Henderson's sentencing. Richard negotiated a plea, admitting his guilt to circumvent a life sentence, ultimately receiving a 53-year term without the chance for parole. Doris confessed to harboring thoughts of ending her own life due to the profound absence of her daughter. However, the consideration of her surviving children held her back from such a finality.